Okay, so this video is going to look at your action research project, which you're going to work on for the next few weeks. You're really going to be updating your proposal, working on any analysis, and then we'll get it ready to give peer feedback for the next go round. So this information is on your calendar for the class. This semester we're working for 2 weeks on this draft, and you're going to submit it to Blackboard, and we'll talk more about that in a minute. Your action research project should be some kind of Word document. And what you did is upload it into TaskStream, and you've got the original document there. You need to go through first and update it with any information you can. So if you changed your project any, update that, update the title page with your title, and you can always change that later. Go ahead and put a date in it if that makes you happy, and we'll update that as we go along this semester. You need to have a running head at the top, and if you notice, the first one has the words running head and then all in caps. For the next page, it just has the running head, all in caps. It doesn't have to be your entire title. It could be a shorter version. You may want to pause with your abstract at the moment. Sometimes it's easier to work on your abstract at the end. And so this is 140 words thereabouts. It's really an overview of your study. And so feel free to work on that now, but you may want to wait and do that last. Some of you then had an outline in there. If you want to leave that in there, or pages, that's perfectly fine. And then I would think of your paper as a KWL chart. The K is everything you know, and that's what you really worked on with your proposal. The W is what you wondered on, and that was your research questions and also everything you studied. So really this paper we're working on now is the L, or what you learned. And I would include in that how you did it, because you're going to really talk about your processes with action research in this paper. As you look at your proposal, you need to go back and look at how you wrote it a few years back in that first class. And so one thing people typically have to do is to change everything to past tense. So that would be an easy first step, is to go through, read it, and put everything past tense. For example, here's one I should have caught. The problem for this study is to determine, and so you would have said was to determine. Your research questions, you may have more than one, and this really should guide your paper. And as you're looking at the analysis, this is what you're going to focus on, are these research questions. You may need to rewrite them a little bit, looking at what you actually gathered and how that's going to impact your analysis. You may or may not have hypotheses. Your review of literature is what you worked on mostly during that class with your research project. And again, I would update this, make sure everything is past tense, and also make sure everything is up to date. So in the last 2 years, have there been other studies? Do a quick search with the library. Post that in discussion board to see if anybody else has similar resources, because a lot of your topics were closely connected. Your methods section, again, this is where you probably thought you were going to do one thing a few years back, and how you actually carried it out may look different. And so look at that for your school or your classroom and how that actually looked out. As you look at the analysis, then this is where you want your research questions to match your analysis. So look at what you gathered and how does that connect to your questions. This is where you have to maybe connect those questions. If you need to reword something or look at different classes, that's perfectly okay to make it fit whatever you actually collected. Your timeline may or may not be in your paper. Sometimes people put this in that method section of how things actually were carried out. And then you actually have probably a mixed method study. You may have quantitative data, which were the numbers from your questions, any surveys you collected, any data you used from benchmark tests. Your qualitative data may be your teacher notes. So those are things you learned as the researcher in your classroom, maybe surveys you did if others were involved with open-ended questions, or even talking with your principal or other teachers. All of those research notes can be included in that data analysis. Some people will kind of group those separately, and so the quantitative analysis may be with one section and the qualitative in another. Write that up as you get started on how that answers your research questions. And then typically you'll have those charts for that, and that was one of the suggestions I gave this student, was to put those charts into the actual section. So you're breaking up your text with pictures, with charts. Just make sure you number them with APA. And at this point, you may or may not have conclusions. Your conclusions for your paper should, again, match your research questions and how those are moving forward? Did you do something similar? Was that investigation appropriate? Was it helpful? Anything you can kind of gain as you move forward. And then you will have a reflection that meets the North Carolina professional teaching standards that can go right after this conclusion. You need to make sure every standard, not every indicator, but every of those 5 standards is addressed and how this paper worked on that. After that, you'll have your resources. They probably look pretty similar to what you did a few years back. Make sure you've updated them. And then this is where she put in her figures at the end. You should put those during that paper, unless it's something long. For example, this is her Appendix A, which was her survey. So go ahead and put those things in. Things you may or may not have used, you can edit as you go. So what you're going to do with those is put them into Blackboard. You're going to work for the next 2 weeks updating that and working to put those in Blackboard. You've got a couple places to do that. One is in the discussion board. Oh, Blackboard's slow today. And you'll post your paper just as a Word document, or if you'd rather save it as a PDF, that's fine to save formatting. And for the next section, you will post anything you've got to help each other. So I've asked you to reply to at least 2 classmates, and you probably should give helpful comments. Obviously, Nakia is already ahead of the game. That's fantastic. The other place you're going to put that is in your Blackboard that I will see, and I'll give comments and feedback just like I did with the paper you just looked at, inserting things and trying to look at APA as well. And that is going to be a check, and it actually looks at how you used your resources and make sure that everything is cited correctly. So it's really helpful. And it'll give you a score as you go through and look at that. So under Research Project, you're going to post it to the check, and the check is going to give you that feedback. It's called a report. And you can go back and fix it immediately, or it can be just something you download. I'll also read the report when I'm reading it. And don't be alarmed. Sometimes it'll say that you've, have 16% that matches, but that's really your resources at the end because it's checking all that as well. And so it's going to give you feedback really about how much matches from the text from what they've seen. If you uploaded your paper when you were doing the 5660 course, it may say that you've connected to another classmate's assignment because it's really your assignment. So don't be alarmed with the check. It's really to help us with the citations. So when you click on this, you're just going to add your paper just as you would anything else and update it, and then look at the report and try and use that for feedback as well. So over the month of August and September, this is where we're going to focus on our action research project, give each other feedback in the next few weeks. And as you're working on that, when you come to a lull, keep going back to TaskStream and working on TaskStream as well. Your TaskStream comprehensive portfolio is entirely everything that you've finished up to this point, and you're going to work on trying to get as many of those finished as well. And as you look at that, you don't have to put your work in as you go, but it will be helpful, I think, because you can see some things are checked off as they're already finished, and that will be a good way to keep working on that. Let me know if you have any questions. This is really just a first draft, but get as much as you can finished, because after this we'll move on to your next project, and so I want to get feedback to you as soon as I can. If you have any questions, let me know.